Hey guys, welcome back. Obviously new setup. I am home for the summer and the Penguins didn't play today, but I want to do a PFR because we know what the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs will look like for the Pittsburgh Penguins and mostly for the entire NHL. I know that there could be some flip-flops here, but pretty much this is set in stone. The Penguins, we know this for sure, will play the New York Islanders for the first time since 2019. Last time they played the Islanders, they did not win a single game, and they were swept in the first round. Very dramatic and very upsetting loss. Hopefully that doesn't happen this year, but this video is going to be a Penguins fan reaction to that. It'll be a playoff preview to that. It'll be my picks for the entirety of the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs, as well as kind of just a brief channel update because, I don't know, there's a lot going on in my life right now, and I want to share with you guys because it could impact my videos. First and foremost, obviously the new setup. My PFR question for the night, one of my PFR question for the night, because I have a bunch of them. What do you think of the new setup? Is there anything I can do to improve it? Do you not like the 2013 poster in the background, which I could easily get rid of? The Connecticut Whale just took a hit. Also, on a more personal note, my 21st birthday is next Tuesday, and one of the things that I know my girlfriend is getting me is Expo markers because I desperately need them because, dear Lord, look at these markers and like, can you barely even see that? They're getting really rusty and old, these Dollar General markers are. But that's the other update. Other question I have for you is, would you like to see more logos? I want to draw more logos. Maybe redo a couple of them. Maybe do a little bit more Penguins logos so that I can like have extra ones. And I also might draw like older logos like of defunct teams like the Nordiques or the Minnesota North Stars. Anyways, the Penguins play the Islanders. Sorry. Before we get to that, I want to give you guys my picks on the Stanley Cup playoffs, just in general, because outside of the Penguins, there's obviously a lot going on. Jack Eichel might get traded. Rick Tocchet and John Tortorella are no longer going to coach their respective teams. Patrick Laine might get traded. I don't know what's a lot of craziness going on. As you've noticed, I've gotten rid of the non-playoff teams, except for the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames, who are going to have their own little playoff series, even though they both are going to miss the playoffs. For those of you that don't know, the Canucks had a COVID outbreak, and because of that, they're going to be playing against the Flames for pretty much the starting week, this week, against each other while the Stanley Cup playoffs are going on, because they have to finish their regular season. And it'll be interesting. Because you'll have playoff games going on, and then you'll still have regular season games going on. I don't know how much I'm going to be interested in that, but it's just interesting. The world that we live in today, where that's able to happen, you know. Regular season games being played by two non-playoff teams, and then, you know, you have the Stanley Cup playoffs going on. I like being wrong with my predictions. I mean, like, I love to be like, you know, I told you so. I knew the Blues were going to win the Cup in 2019. But it's much more fun to be just completely wrong. So here are my just bold, on record, just random picks for the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. These are the first things that popped into my mind, and we're going with them. Vegas versus St. Louis. Mason, I'm sorry, but Vegas is probably the best team in the entire league, maybe? At least the Western Conference, especially on paper. They actually had to not dress an amount of skaters tonight because of salary cap reasons. That's a little sketchy. Also, I was thinking of this today. You remember the Fleury incident last year in the playoffs where he got stabbed in the back because Robin Leonard took his spot? I don't know. Times have changed. I have Vegas in 6. I think St. Louis could put up a fight, even though they did not have a really good season, and Mason will attest to that. Go follow Blues Fan Reacts or go subscribe to him. But they are still a very experienced playoff team. A lot of core pieces are still from that 2019 Stanley Cup team, and I think they could absolutely put up a fight against Fleury and the Vegas Golden Knights, but I think Vegas still takes it. Carolina versus Nashville. Nashville was fighting it out between Dallas for the last playoff spot in the Central, and I think whatever team goes up against Carolina is going to lose, no matter if it's Dallas or Nashville. I have Carolina taking it in 5. I think they just have such a good roster there with such a really good cesspool of good young players, just young underrated players. Jacob Slavin, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, they're gonna do some damage. And in the middle here, my pick at the beginning of the season for the Stanley Cup was Carolina over the Colorado Avalanche. That's changed, as you can see on the board. But yeah, Florida and Tampa Bay will meet the first time ever. The Battle of Florida will be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I I'm going to pick Florida. I'm going to be wrong because Tampa's probably going to win. But Florida in 7. They've had their number the entirety of the regular season. Tonight they got on a bunch of scraps, and Florida's had a really good regular season. And Patrick Hornquist, man, he's going to get the Panthers to the next round. It's probably going to be Tampa, though. Colorado versus Minnesota. For those of you that actually really know me, I don't like Minnesota. It's just a franchise for no particular reason. They never did anything to me. I just think they're a weak franchise. Colorado's going to sweep them in 4 games. Over on the East Coast, Montreal versus Toronto is likely going to happen. Montreal clinched tonight. King Angus, I'm going to be on your side on this one. I think Montreal has a lot of underrated players, even though they're Montreal, in terms of a city. They get a lot of press. But they have a lot of, under-the-radar players, and I think that's going to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, just how the Columbus Blue Jackets did last year in the play-in round. And Toronto is not going to be able to get out of the first round again. History is going to repeat itself. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll count on Toronto when I actually get out of the first round. But, history has told me that they're not going to be able to. And Montreal's a team that I think is very worthy of beating them. Carey Price, if he's on, can do it. And they have a lot of young players there in Montreal. I don't know. Sue me. I have Montreal winning it in 7 games. Over in the Mass Mutual East Division, I have the Bruins losing to the Capitals. That was confirmed tonight. That is going to happen. And the Penguins will play the winner of that if they, knock on wood, beat the Islanders, which, as you can see, I don't have up just yet. I think the Capitals, even though they're very hurt right now, they have enough experience, and Ovechkin will be back. And the Bruins are fading, in my opinion. Their goaltending is a little bit sketchy because Rask has, when he's playing, he's been great, but he's been hurt. He may retire at the end of the season. I think this is it for the Bruins, but again, I could be proven wrong. And the Oilers and the Jets. That'll be an interesting matchup because I don't think either team are Stanley Cup contenders. While I guess you could probably say that every series has a potential Stanley Cup contender, this one I really don't see either. I'm going to go with McDavid and Draisaitl with the easy pick here. I know Hellebuck's a great goaltender, but Oilers in 5 for me. So without rambling, we'll get to the actual series that you guys are here for, the Pittsburgh Penguins versus the New York Islanders in the first round of the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. Okay, so on the board now is notes that I have for the Pittsburgh Penguins versus New York Islanders. First round series. Again, I'm getting new markers next week. My markers are running a little dry here. I might have to get an emergency couple markers, go out tomorrow. Whatever. I'm not going to reveal my pick because we'll do that at the end. And obviously, the Penguins have struggled. I'm going to take a book out of the page. That's not how the saying goes. I'm going to take a page out of the book of the hockey news, one of my favorite sources for hockey coverage, but I most specifically like their hockey podcasts, where they went over, last year they did this, they went over every play-in series, went through offense, defense, goaltending, special teams, coaching, experience, and the intangibles for every matchup, and that's what I'm going to do with this series, and I'm going to give you guys my picks on them. Now, if I pick the Islanders for more than the Penguins, that doesn't mean I don't think the Islanders will win. It's just who I think is better at the specific category. Before we get into that, let's go over the obvious, the statistics that really matter. The Penguins were 6-2-0 against the Islanders in the regular season this year. The Islanders were 2-6-0, and that's amazing, especially with what happened in 2019, which I also have on the board. The Islanders swept the Penguins 4-0 in a very embarrassing fashion in one of the worst playoff series I've ever seen in my entire life from the Penguins. But they outsped and they outscored the Islanders, and they were able to defeat their just sluggish trap game. They're obviously a very defensive-minded team with Barry Trotz, and Barry Trotz knows the Penguins very well. But the Penguins have figured it out, especially in the regular season, and they're 6-2-0 against them. But, again, 4-0. Was the series against the Penguins in 2019, where the Islanders won. And the Penguins are 1-9 in their last 10 playoff games. I know the Penguins, have that reputation of being successful playoff teams, playoff performers, back-to-back Stanley Cups in their franchise history, not once but twice. But in recent history, the Penguins have struggled. They lost in the play-in round to the Canadiens. They were swept by the Islanders. And then in 2018, they lost to the Capitals when they lost the last 2 games of that, which combines for a 1-9 last 10 playoff record. And the Penguins have struggled. Right off the bat, these are the depth charts for both teams. I have the injured players in red, Andres Lee being the obvious one for the Islanders, Brandon Tanev, Rodriguez, Matheson, Jari, DeSmith, who will come back for the Penguins. These are the depth charts, though. These are not the lines. If someone skipped towards the end of this video and is like, oh, these blah, 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 go bark at them, because these are not the lines. These are the depth charts. Just want to clarify that. So, obviously, I think the Penguins have the best player in this series, and that is Sidney Crosby. Even though he's 33 years old, he's the best player. And I think the Penguins have the better offense in this, even though the Islanders are a very deep team offensively. And what they did at the trade deadline certainly helped. They added Zajac and Palmieri, and last season they added Pajot, who is now signed with them. That's been a great add for them, under the radar type player. They have a lot of scorers that can, come out of nowhere. Jordan Eberle is a Penguin killer, and he did it in 2019, and he'll be something to watch for. Matt Barzal is such a good player. Anders Lee will not play in this series. They have like Leo Komarov, and again, I didn't put the entire roster here. These are just the depth charts. But I think on offense, the Islanders have a lot of good players that can come, and threaten the Penguins. But Sidney Crosby, Jake Gensel, and Brian Russ has been the best line for the Penguins so far. The Jeff Carter, Frederick Gaudreau, and Jared McCann line, and again, I have Rodriguez there because this is depth chart. But that line has been great. And Evgeny Malkin just got back, and Kasperi Kapanen has been great. I think the Penguins have the edge here on offense, and I think it's by a pretty substantial margin, even though the Islanders have a lot of scorers. It'll all come down to how much the Crosby line can produce, because obviously that's going to be matched up against the Islanders' top defensive lines, but we'll have to wait and see. But for right now, I'm giving the offense in this one to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Defense is a little bit different, though, and I'm just going to come out and say it. I think the Islanders have a better defense than the Penguins. Just on paper, they have younger defensemen, with their top pairing being Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock. The worst name for play-by-play commentaries. You have Pelech, and it's a nightmare. Pulock, former Yuri Yoder. Compare that to Dumoulin and Letang, which have had a great, past 6-7 years together, 2 Stanley Cups on that. But the thing kind of falls off, and we saw this earlier in the season with the Penguins having defensive injuries. They had to sign Yannick Weber, bring up Chad Riedel and Kevin Churchman. The Penguins have good defensemen, but they're not very deep on defense. Juuso Riikola has been sitting there, and he's collecting dust on the scratch list. But if the Penguins' defense can be healthy, I think they have a lot of, good defensemen, especially Mike Matheson, who has had a career of tormenting the New York Islanders. We saw it this year with Pittsburgh. Back when he was with Florida, he played really good against them, almost too good, where he almost got some suspensions. I think he did. I think he got fined or suspended. We'll get to the things to look for, but Mike Matheson is one of them. He should be healthy for this series, and he'll be a big X factor. But again, you look at the Islanders' defense, you have a lot of young stud defensemen there, especially Pelech, Pulock, and I think they have 3 great defensive lines. They do have a guy like Andy Green, who's a little bit older, but I think the Penguins are slightly inferior to the Islanders' defense. Goaltending is an interesting one, because I think both goalies are very good, and I think on paper, Tristan Jarry is the better goaltender than Semyon Varlamov. But despite that, I think the Islanders have the edge in goaltending, because their defensive style allows for their goaltending to exceed. Especially since Barry Trotz came over, the Islanders' goaltending has been stellar. You saw it with Thomas Greiss. You saw it with Semyon Varlamov. Now, Robin Lehner. No matter who it is, it seems like the Islanders have a just nurturing way of just taking these goalies under their wing. I don't know who their goaltending coach is. I'll put it on screen right now in post, but he's been great. And the Islanders have had great goaltending because of their defensive style. While I think Tristan Jarry is a better goaltender on paper, and DeSmith, as I mentioned in my last PFR, that goaltending duo has been great. They're both going to be coming off minor injuries. They will be healthy, even though they're in red. I think the Islanders have the slight edge in goaltending. Again, I think Jarry's the better goaltender, but I think the Islanders' system allows their goaltending to shine. Special teams, without even looking into it, the Penguins have the better special teams because of the way that the power play has been performing lately. Not only the first unit, but the second unit as well. And with the emergence of having a 1-2 system on the power play, with Jared McCann on that second unit, I love Jared McCann so much, and Jeff Carter, the Penguins can do so much with that power play. Their penalty kill has been pretty solid. That'll improve greatly when Brandon Tanev gets back. And the Islanders are very good defensively as well, but they're gonna have a day with the Evgeny Malkin back on the power play and Jared McCann on the second unit. And I think the Penguins have the edge in special teams, but I don't think special teams is that big of a category. Again, these categories aren't equally big. I think offense is obviously big and defense is obviously big. When it comes to coaching and intangibles, it's a little bit less on the list. I'm not saying all these categories have the same weight, but special teams I'll give to the Penguins. Coaching is very tight because you have arguably the two of the best coaches in the entire league. But based off of the recent success that he's had, especially this year, and if he does not get nominated for a Jack Adams, there's just serious anti-Penguins bias against them. It's Mike Sullivan for the Jack Adams for me. And I think coaching has a slight edge to Pittsburgh in this one. Because Mike Sullivan's a great coach. And while he's not very, technical, he doesn't really have a system that you think of. Like, you think of the 1-3-1 and the trap when you think of Barry Trotz. You don't really think of a specific system when you think of Mike Sullivan. What you think of with Mike Sullivan is just getting the most out of his players. And that's really what it comes down to. The motto in the 2016 and 2017 Cups was just play. And Mike Sullivan is the best coach for that. He was an AHL coach for a good majority of his career with Wilkes-Barre before he finally got the call up. I know he was an assistant coach in Boston, but the first head coaching job he's ever had is with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he's still on his first stint as a head coach in the National Hockey League. He's never been a head coach before. It's incredible. The number one thing about Mike Sullivan, again, is that he gets the most out of his players, and especially come playoff time, that's the most important for me. I know Trotz has great systems, but you can't win a game by just looking at the whiteboard all day, like I do. Experience is obviously the Penguins, but also it's not, because as I mentioned before, the Penguins are 1-9 in their last 10 playoff games. Obviously Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Jeff Carter, Brian Dumoulin, Brian Rust, Chris Letang. Did I say Chris Letang already? Jay Gensel. They all have Stanley Cups to their names. Multiple Stanley Cups to their names, except for Gensel. But the Islanders, based on recency, have been further than the Penguins. They made it to the Eastern Conference Final last year. I just want to point that out, even though I do have Pittsburgh in the experience category. They obviously have a lot more experience. Sidney Crosby has 3 cups, and he's going to lead this team to as many as he can before he retires. But the Islanders are not, taking a butt whooping in this category, in my opinion, because they got to the Eastern Conference Final last year. And that's a pretty big deal for the Islanders. That's the first time they've done that since, what, the 80s, I think? And I don't know. It's they have a good core and a good team and a good coaching staff, and they're one of the most underrated teams in the entire National Hockey League. I don't like the way that they play because I think it's boring, but it's working. They remind me of the New Jersey Devils in the 90s, and they got 3 Stanley Cups. The Devils do, to show for it. What do the Islanders have? I don't know. Intangibles, that's kind of your miscellaneous type things. Injuries is the first thing I think of when it comes to intangibles. The Penguins have more injuries than the Islanders, even though the Islanders have a very significant injury with Anders Lee. I'll point that out because he's their captain and they're one of their best players. Barzal's their best player, in my opinion. But the Penguins are missing right now Matheson, Tanev, Rodriguez, and both their goaltenders. Both their goaltenders will be back, though, according to Sullivan. Rodriguez should be back soon. Matheson should be back soon. Tanev is skating. But, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins. Someone else is going to get hurt. I'm sorry. Someone else is going to get hurt. I hope that doesn't happen, though. But right now, that's the main intangible I look forward to. The other intangible I look forward to is just Sidney Crosby as a person. Sidney Crosby wants to win. And based off of the 1-9 last playoff games that he's had, he's going to put this team on his back and muster as many wins as he can. And he's going to be, he wants another cup. He wants as many cups as he can before he retires. But he's not going to retire that soon. But still, he's not in his prime, but he's at the very tip end of his prime. He still has it. Again, as I mentioned in my last PFR, Sidney Crosby would score 96 points if this was an 82-game season. He's 33. He still has it, but not as much as he used to. But is that enough to win a Stanley Cup? I don't know. It's a different discussion. But that's what I think of when I think of intangibles, because when it comes to the playoffs, it's about the core. And does this core still have it? How much does Malkin want to win? How much does Chris Letang want to win? I already know how much Sidney Crosby wants to win. But how much does the rest of the core want to get another cup? How much does Jeff Carter want another cup? That's really what it comes down to. How much this team wants it. And based off of their regular season play, I think they want it. I think I have won it as a fan. So I'm going to give the intangibles to Pittsburgh. And again, before we wrap this up, just the lines overall that I have on the board, again, are not the actual line combinations. They are the depth charts. But to just go over them really quick, Gensel, Crosby, Russ, Zucker, Malkin, Kapanen is a pretty good top six. Zucker needs to perform a little bit better, in my opinion. And Malkin and Kapanen need to start performing consistently because they've been injured and they're just now coming back and being together. They had good chemistry. What's it going to look like? McCann, Carter, whoever's on that third right side, I love that line. I love that. Could that be the next HBK line? Who knows? And I think the third line, or the fourth line, when it comes back, will be Aston Reese, Bluger, Tanev. Compare that to the Islanders' offense. Lee, Barzell, Eberle's not going to be a line because Lee is hurt. But whoever they throw on that first line, I think will have tremendous amounts of success because Matt Barzell is such a good player. Like, seriously, like, Penguins fans that are watching this, I know, like, we have a little bit of a rivalry with the Islanders and whatever. Matt Barzell is a hell of a good player. He's so good. And he's not just good offensively. He's so good defensively. And it's been talked about before about what Barry Trotz did to him in his first couple of years. Barry Trotz made him a two-way player. Matt Barzell might be the next Patrice Bergeron. He's not going to score as many points as Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl or Austin Matthews. But he has the defensive game to make up for it. This guy's going to win Selkies. This guy is such a well-rounded player. He's not the flashiest in terms of the goals and whatever, but he's so fast and he's so skilled. He's so defensively savvy. His hockey sense is off the chart. He's a good player, and I think he's better than John Tavares ever was if he continues this progression. And that's going to be a player that's going to cause the Penguins trouble for the next decade. No, even if the Penguins fall off or whatever. It's going to cause every team in the division, in the Metropolitan Division, once we get back to normal, it's going to cause them problems. Outside of that, though, I think the Islanders have a lot of good players. They don't have a lot of great players, similar to the Canadiens, which upset the Penguins last year. Nelson, Bailey, Clutterbuck, Cizikas, Matt Martin, those names don't jump out at you, but they do when it's the third period and they score, they give the game-winning goal. And that's going to be the biggest, battle for the Penguins, is controlling all of their offensive players that can score big-time goals. Casey Cizikas is one of the most underrated players in the entire league. He's so good. And then, of course, their trade deadline acquisitions, they got some pretty good players as well with Palmieri, Zajac, and going back to last year, Pajot. On defense, though, as I mentioned, when the Penguins' defense is working and fully healthy, I think it's at its best. Cody Ceci, Mike Matheson, great first impressions with the Penguins. I would, as I mentioned in my last PFR, like a little bit more offense out of them. Same goes with Pettersson Marino. I know Pettersson's not really much of a scorer, but Marino has dipped back, and I'm going to do my Penguins grades for this season, which I tweeted on Twitter. I'm going to do a PSC article for that, Pittsburgh Sportscastle. And yeah, Marino gets a D for me. I'll just reveal that for him because I think he has so much more, and I want him to have so much more. Jared McCann was like my favorite player to root for this season, and I think heading into the playoffs, now that I know McCann has got it and he's good off on his own, I'm going to be rooting for John Marino because he has so much potential, man. And like, if he can do what he did in his first year in the NHL, his rookie year, the Penguins are going to be so much better off. And he has it in him. That's why I gave him a D. That'll be another video, another article, but that's why, because he has it in him. He has the potential to be a 50, 60 point scorer on the defense, but whatever. John Marino is going to be an X factor in this as well, just as Jason Zucker is for the Penguins on the offense. In terms of the Islanders, as I mentioned, they have a lot of young defensemen. They even traded Devon Toews away because they could afford it. They have so many young defensemen. Scott Mayfield, Noah Dobson, and then Pellick, whatever you want to call it. And they still have veteran guys there with Green and Letty. It's a good, solid defense, and it's going to be hard for the Crosby line to score. So you're going to need depth scoring in these types of games. And as I mentioned before on when we were going over goaltending, I think Jari is the better goaltender overall, but I think the Islanders system allows Varlamov to excel. Hopefully Jari will be able to outperform him. Jari only has, 1, 2 playoff games of experience? I don't know what that means because, there's a lot of goaltenders that have 0 playoff experience and go on to win the Stanley Cup. Matt Murray, Jordan Binnington. So who knows what Jari is able to perform in the playoffs because he's technically never played a Stanley Cup playoffs game. He played a play-in game against the Canadiens. I'm excited to see what Jari can do in the playoffs. But I've been rambling for a lot here. This is a longer video. I have a lot to say. There's a lot going on in the league despite the Penguins not playing right now. Jack Eichel might get traded. Who knows? Whatever. I'm so excited for the playoffs. And I'm so excited for the Penguins to actually win in the playoffs because there's something with this team that you just know feels right. And before we go, well, I guess I have to do this before we go. I'll give my overall picks for this series. Pittsburgh Penguins versus New York Islanders. The Islanders will win 2 games, and the Pittsburgh Penguins will win 4. The Penguins win this series in 6 games. I hope I'm right. I hope I'm wrong, and the Penguins win it in 5 or 4 games, or even 7. I just want the Penguins to win. I would love the Penguins to win the Stanley Cup this year, but I just want them to win a series to start off because, as I mentioned before, yes, the Penguins won cups in 16 and 17, but they're 1-9 in their last 10 playoff games. If they're going to continue to make the playoffs, let's do something with it, and let's go on a run potentially. This team has very similar cogs to that 2016 team, where Malkin was also hurt, where they also brought in underrated players at the deadline, where Crosby tried to carry the team again, where they brought in a young goaltender that people didn't really know much about. I'm so excited for the freaking playoffs. And before we go, again, for those of you that don't know, my plan for the playoffs is to do a live stream during the game if I can, because I'll be working a job and I'll be doing 2 internships this summer, which I just got a new internship at Pittsburgh Sports Now, and I'm so excited for. Shout out Alan Saunders for that. Absolutely amazing. Go follow them on, YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff, because Owen Krebs will be writing for them in the near future. And I will, after that live stream, the PFR live stream, I'll be doing an actual PFR, a video like this, but not as long and not as unscripted. And I'm so excited. And hopefully I'll be able to do it deep into May, maybe into June. But if not, let me know what you guys want out of this channel, because I have a lot of video ideas, but I don't know what specifically you guys want. This is mostly a hockey channel. All of my 220 subscribers, thank you so much for 220, it's amazing. All of you guys have mostly been here for my Penguins content. My Falcon and the Winter Soldier review got 18 views. Like, I'm not mad about that. I'm just, I'm seeing it as if most people are here for hockey. So I have a lot of ideas. My PFR questions, again, there wasn't a game tonight. My PFR questions are: 1, what would you like from the new setup here? Again, I'm getting new markers. 2, what would you like me to do this offseason? Because there will be an offseason, even if the Penguins win the Stanley Cup, knock on wood. What would you like to see from those videos? And 3, be honest with me. What can I do to improve my videos? I know, I have gotten a tremendous amount of support from you guys, and I cannot thank you enough, but still, be honest with me. Be brutally honest with me. What can I do to improve my videos? Do I shorten them down? Because this one's going to be like 30 minutes, dear Lord. Do I, edit them up some more? Do I, talk some more? Do I be more funny in them? Whatever. Comment down below. Thank you so much for your guys' support. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the first game of the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs versus the New York Islanders. I love you all 3,000. But if you don't like my opinions, well, too bad. These are my own opinions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you all for watching. Yeah. Let's go, Pens!